All right, so we are live, guys. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jesse, and I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. For those joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world. And we are super excited that you guys are all joining us live and on YouTube for our 2019-2020 season. It's going to be like our best year ever. We got all these fantastic plans, and we are starting September, like last year, with an entire month dedicated to marine plastics. So you guys might know through your studies, through summer, that this is one of the biggest issues in the world, affecting literally coastlines, coast to coast to coast around the world. And so we're so excited to have a slew of amazing scientists, explorers, conservationists, and more that are going to highlight the issue and talk about how you can help. We're going to get to our speaker in just a minute. She's fantastic. We couldn't be starting with a better person. But first, I want to go one by one through our classes and give them a chance to do a bit of a shout out and say hi. So we've got Miss Pressel's grade 11-12s in St. Augustine in Florida. Hi, guys. Hey, we've got Mr. Douglas's grade 11-12s in Peterborough, Ontario. Awesome. We've got Miss Jassie's grade 11s in Brampton, Ontario. Hey, guys. Oh, there we go. They're excited. We've got Miss Hawkinjoss's entire middle school at Our Lady of Victories 5 through 8 in Sayreville, New Jersey. Hi, guys. We've got Miss Foster's grade 8s in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, who started our hangout before we started, all standing on their desks, so that was exciting. So welcome in, guys. And last but not least, we've got Miss Robinson's grade 5s and 6s in Petawawa, Ontario. Hi, guys. All right, man, if enthusiasm like this keeps up all year long, we're in for a real treat. So we are joined live in a remote island in Indonesia, literally on the other side of the globe. As we come to 10 a.m., she comes to 10 p.m. So we're so happy she's joining us as night falls out there. We're joined by Elitza Germanov, who is a lead researcher at the Marine Megafauna Foundation. So she works to understand and study how the smallest plastic that we put in the ocean affects some of the biggest, most majestic creatures in the world, notably whale sharks and manta rays. And if you don't know about whale sharks and manta rays, you're going to find out today they're the coolest creatures on Earth. Without further ado, with the best job on the planet, thank you so much for joining us, Elitza, and take it away.
Miss, I need duct tape. It's not going to stay.
You're good to go, Elitza.
All right, I'm just on mute.
Yeah. So teachers, make sure to keep your classes on mute, okay, guys? And then Elitza, you are unmuted now. You're good to go.
Great. Hi, everyone. Just double check that you can see my my slides.
Yep, you're good to go.
Okay, awesome. Pleasure to meet you all. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my PhD studies. And first of all, I'll start off with how I actually got into what I do. If I can change my slide. Yeah. Okay, so when I went to university, I started off very much living my scientific life in the lab. I love mixing up different things together, doing experiments, very much the typical lab scientist. So I was a biochemist. But along the way, I picked up scuba diving as a hobby. And I just got enthralled with the ocean, especially with large animals that live there. I loved it so much that I wanted other people to experience it as well. So I became a scuba dive instructor, teaching other people how to dive. The more time I spent in the ocean, the more I started getting quite interested in the different marine animals that live there, but also getting a little bit concerned with some of the things that I saw happening. Things like marine pollution, for example. So that's when I decided to enroll in postgraduate studies at Murdoch University and also join up with the conservationists at Marine Megafauna Foundation. So here's me, but it's not just me on the team. There's quite a lot of us, and we all worked very, very hard. We're all spaced around the world, and actually it's very rare that we see each other. Maybe once a year or once every 2 years we get together and see each other in person. But we all support each other, you know, through the internet community and do conservation science together. And what is it that really brings us together? Well, it's our love for large animals, or marine large animals, megafauna, marine megafauna. So we're particularly interested in the largest ray of the ocean. That's the manta ray, also here behind me on my little poster, and also the largest shark, but also the largest fish, the whale shark. So you might notice that these two animals are also on Marine Megafauna's logo, along with the sea turtle, because these are the species that we mostly focus on. Okay, so manta rays and whale sharks have a couple of things in common. But interestingly, they are, well, besides for being elasmobranchs, which is a type of fish that has a cartilaginous skeleton, they are also filter feeders, which means that they are filtering water or sieving the water in order to get their food and meet their energy demands. So literally sieving for a living. Oh. So this is what they're going after. Small animals called zooplankton that float around with the currents. But being one of the biggest fish in the sea and having to eat some of the smallest animals in the sea, you imagine that you have to eat quite a lot to meet your large energy demand. So manta rays are ingesting about 90 cubic meters of water per hour, and whale sharks are whopping 300 cubic meters of water per hour. And if that's difficult for you to comprehend, here is a cubic meter, also known as a ton of water. So multiply that in your head 90 times for the mantas or 300 times for the whale sharks. And remember, that's per hour. Okay, so mantas have some interesting feeding behavior. We often see them feeding very near the surface, where they are just basically skimming just underneath. They've got their mouths wide open. They've got these fins called the cephalic fins, which help them funnel water in. They can also bottom feed and get down really close down to the sediment, and then just kind of scoop their fins either inward or slightly out so they can eat up any plankton that has sunk down. And sometimes they do basically a somersault called a barrel roll, where they feed on the same patch of plankton over and over again. So they do this when the plankton is quite patchy, and instead of basically swimming forward and backward, they'll somersault over the same area. So see, these are some of the feeding behaviors that we observe. Whale sharks are pretty good at filter feeding as well. They do basically ram feeding, where they just swim into the water and gulping along as they go. And they've got a pretty big mouth as well. So you don't want to get in front by an accident. All right, so let's look at the distribution of these animals. Where are the manta rays and also the whale sharks? Well, generally, they are found in similar parts of the world. They love the equatorial, warmer tropical waters. But in some parts of the world where ocean currents bring warmer waters up north or south, like, for example, the coast of South Africa, or up as far north as Japan, and even some parts of the Atlantic, we can actually see both manta rays and whale sharks. Okay, so that's about the megafauna. So what about the microplastics? Well, you guys all know what plastic is. It's a pliable material made from hydrocarbons. And microplastic just refers to a size class of plastic. So scientifically, when we talk about microplastics, we're talking about plastic that's between 1 micron, very small, can't see it with our naked eye, to about 5 millimeters in size, which is basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these bits here on my ruler. So most of these microplastics here are between 1 and 2 millimeters that you see. So there's other size classes of plastic as well, nanoplastic, which is really small, and then mesoplastic and macroplastics, which are the larger bits of plastic that you can more easily see with your naked eye. So for my studies, I'm basically focusing on this size range, the micro to mesoplastic. Okay, so what happens to plastic when it's exposed to the environment? It does degrade with the radiation from the sun. So UV radiation breaks it down, makes it brittle, and breaks it down into little pieces, along with other environmental conditions. For example, when it's in the ocean, it gets carried away by waves, and as it breaks into the shore, it starts to become into smaller and smaller pieces. So this is problematic because when it's small, it's more easily ingestible by marine life. And it's not just the problem of ingesting something that's not digestible. The problem also comes that a lot of plastics have a number of toxins that are added to them during the manufacturing process, but are also really good at absorbing or attaching other toxic substances known as persistent organic pollutants, which are found in the marine environment. So basically, these little pieces of plastic act like little toxic pills, which when ingested by marine life, go up into the food web and food chain, transfer up the food chain, and potentially even end up on our own dinner plates. Okay, so that's the not so great news. Sorry. Got and that is that we have an estimated 5 trillion pieces of plastic that are floating around in our ocean currently. And it's not uniform. It's spread around in different places. So we have these 5 oceanic gyres, which basically are large rotating currents. One is in the North Atlantic, and there's one in the South Atlantic, in the Indian Ocean, in the North Pacific, and also in the South Pacific. And these large rotating currents basically concentrate the large and small floating debris. So this is where we see our biggest concentration of plastic and also microplastics. So on my little map here, the darker the color, the red, the more plastic is estimated to be floating around in these areas. Okay, so here what I've outlined is the Coral Triangle region. So this is where I'm currently located here in Indonesia. And this place is really special. It is what's called the Coral Triangle. It's composed of Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and East Timor. So basically 6 countries, but it houses over 600 species of corals, or 76% of the world's coral types, and over 2,000 species of reef fish, or about just over a third of the world's species of reef fish can be found here. And it does support the lives, the jobs, and the ability to make an income for over 120 million people. So it's important to take that into consideration. This is an important environment, not only for nature, for marine life, but also for a number of people. So this is a reason why we need to keep this environment as healthy as possible. But unfortunately, some estimates put that plastic by weight is going to be outnumbering fish in just a little bit over 30 years from now. So this is a reason why I got really interested in studying marine plastic and trying to figure out solutions on how to prevent this from happening in the next 30 years. So we already know that plastic impacts marine life. Over 90% of seabirds, unfortunately, have ingested plastic, and between 18 to 30% of commercial fish stocks in Europe are known to ingest plastic as well. All species of marine turtles have been documented to ingest plastic, and more concerningly, the smallest animals in the sea, the zooplankton, the very thing that manta rays and whale sharks are feeding on, is also capable of ingesting the smallest pieces of microplastic. And in some parts of the world, for example, in the North Pacific gyre, plastic actually outnumbers plankton 6 to 1. So there's 6 times more plastic than plankton. So these are some figures to, make a Halloween story out of. So going back to the plastic pollution hotspots, I just wanted to show you where the habitat range for the whale shark is overlapping with those hotspots. So those lines are showing you whale sharks. And then the next one, the next one is the manta rays. So again, this Coral Triangle region stands out as a place where not only is it a habitat for manta rays and whale sharks, but it's also an area that's got quite a bit of microplastic pollution. So another reason that we wanted to look into look into plastic pollution and how it might impact some of these largest animals, the manta rays and the whale sharks, is because these animals unfortunately are threatened with extinction. They're facing a number of threats worldwide. Their populations are declining. So any additional threats needs to be quickly assessed and looked into. The good news is there are a number of protection treaties which are aimed to help curb these population declines, but they need all the help that they can get from scientists and from the public alike. So the very first thing I did when I started my PhD almost over 4 years ago is I started to go to locations where we knew manta rays and whale sharks were feeding and having a snorkel to look in the water and see what I can find there. So here's a video of me looking at one of these locations. This is in Manta Bay in Nusa Penida, which is just next door to where I'm currently located. And you can see there's quite a bit of debris in the water, some natural, some plastic. And I'm gonna dunk my head under water now and see what's going on there. Water's nice and blue and clear and it's quite warm, but there is some plastic floating underneath as well. And here's those manta rays feeding quite close to where the plastic is, feeding amongst that. And remember, this is just the stuff. Oh, there's a plastic straw. That's just the plastic that you can see with the naked eye. These are the scuba divers. They're here to see the manta rays. And here's the mantas going about their day and feeding along around the same area where the plastic is congregating. Is also where the zooplankton is brought in, because the plastic and the zooplankton come in on the very same currents. All right, so I thought, okay, this is a pretty good place to do my research. And then a friend of mine shared this photo with me. This is a particularly bad day in the very same location. Okay, so this wasn't the only location that we chose. So that's location B in Nusa Penida, just south of Bali. That's pretty much where I currently am at the moment. We also wanted to look at some whale shark feeding grounds. So this is in Java, just east of where I am. And also west of where I am in A, and then east to where I am, another manta ray feeding location in the Komodo National Park. So those are my 3 study locations. And basically what we did is we sampled the water with this plankton net in a quantitative fashion, meaning that we're able to calculate the volume of water that enters in. We also swam with a smaller net a bit closer to the animals. We didn't want to bring our big boat and disturb them. While we were on the boat, we also took visual counts of the plastic. So we had 2 volunteers on either side of the boat, basically counting all the plastic that they saw within 5 meters apart from the boat on either side. And then we get back to the lab with some help from my volunteers. We counted, categorized, measured all the pieces of plastic that we found in those samples. So this is just a little screenshot down my microscope tube just to see what I'm finding. And this is a little example of what the water surface sometimes look like, similar to that video. And we also looked at some differences between the rainy season and the dry season. So we don't have winter and we don't have summer here. It's always pretty warm, but we have about 6 months of the year where we get a lot of rain. And then we have another 6 months of the year where we haven't had rain at all. So I wanted to compare to see if there's any difference between those 2 times. Here's another little video of me doing my favorite part of my job, and that's swimming with the mantis, of course, and stealing their food. Well, just a little bit. This video is actually in Komodo, and that's me swimming past with the little net, stealing some of their food so I can look at it and see if there's any plastic in there. Okay, so I had a lot of help from students from the university in Bali called Udayana University, and they came out with me every year and rain or shine, helped me collect samples and do the laboratory work. So this is a typical wet season day, and this is a pretty typical dry season day, so a little bit different. And we actually found quite a bit of difference in the amount of visual plastic that we found floating on the surface. So in the rainy season, we had a lot more plastic, 29,000 pieces of plastic per kilometer squared. Whereas in the dry season, well, not only, but 600 pieces of plastic per kilometer squared. So quite a significant difference between the plastic. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this video. This is a video my friend took a couple of years back and went kind of viral across the world as diver with plastic, rubbish diver. But anyways, this video was taken during that rainy season. During the dry season, we don't see things like that. Okay, so looking at the type of plastic that we saw floating around, the most common, there's different types. We saw soft, meaning like plastic bags and wrappers, hard, like little pieces of, bottle caps or plastic forks or spoons or things like that. Foam, like styrofoam, plastic bottles, drinking bottles, and just other miscellaneous items. And what we found was that plastic bags and wrappers, soft films, basically, were the most common type of plastic that we found in all of our locations, regardless of wet or dry season. This is the Manta locations and the whale shark locations. So this is definitely a place where we can start trying to cut down the amount of plastic that enters in the ocean by stopping to use plastic bags and cutting down on the wrappers and things that we introduce into our lives. Okay, so a little bit more detail now, looking at the small pieces of plastic. These are the plastic that we sampled with our net. So we found again that films, those soft plastics, were most common kind in pretty much all of our locations, but in some locations fragments, so the harder bits were actually more common. All right, and then we basically took the number of pieces of plastic that we found from our trawls, from our net tows, and we calculated how many pieces of plastic we get per cubic meter. And then knowing how many cubic meters of water mantas ingest per hour, we can calculate that manta rays in some of our locations, for example, the Nusa Penida, where I have showed you the videos, can ingest up to 63 pieces of plastic per hour. Whereas whale sharks in the Java location are potentially ingesting about 137 pieces of plastic per hour. So this is another little shot down my microscope tube. You can see these are the little pieces of plastic, and next to them is the tiny little plankton that the animals are actually going for. Oh, that went a bit fast, sorry. It's kind of spoiled the ending there. But yeah, so not just theoretical, but we wanted to have a look at, well, are they really ingesting the plastic? And one way we can do that is, okay, this is a bit gross, but if we're very lucky, we can actually collect their poop. Yeah, so that's part of my job. I collect manta poop, and it's quite rare actually to get manta poop. So I've asked the community of divers around me if they wouldn't mind carrying a little tube with them in the pocket of their diving jackets, and if they happen to see a manta poop, if they wouldn't mind just picking it up. So that's what they did. And this is a photo of a sample of plastic that I did find in a manta poop. So indeed, mantas are ingesting plastic and actually able to expel it and pass it. And this photograph here is actually of some manta vomit. So this manta had ingested a bunch of plastic with a bunch of zooplankton and decided, I don't like it, and just expelled it out through its mouth. One of my colleagues was there and picked it all up and brought it back to the lab. And as you can see, there's even some candy wrappers in there. So even the bigger stuff made it into the mouth. But good job, Manta, you spit it out. For whale sharks, we didn't have the opportunity to do any of those sample collection, but we know from other studies in Brazil, for example, and in the Philippines, that pieces of plastic have been found inside the stomach of whale sharks. So that pretty much confirms that whale sharks are also ingesting plastic. So it kind of sounds pretty grim note to end on, but remember guys, these are some of the largest animals in the sea. They're quite special. Quite a lot of people come from all over the world just to swim and see these animals. A lot of people in this part of the world are very proud that they have these animals here. So they are considered iconic species, flagship species if you have it. Basically, they can be a symbol to lead a change or a campaign for improvement in environmental conditions. So if enough people care about this animal, they're going to care about where it lives, they're going to care about the lifestyle that it has. And obviously, if there's a lot of plastic in the water, they're going to want to change that and help protect that animal. So this is basically what we're doing, is we're raising the alarm about the environmental conditions in some of these marine protected areas and national parks by showcasing how these animals are being impacted by the plastic there. Another cool thing about these large animals is that they have very large habitat ranges. They need to they need to have a big roaming range in order to be able to get enough energy to maintain their large size. They swim from one place to another. I mean, mantas can swim for over 600 kilometers. We know a few mantas swimming in 450 kilometers in less than a month. So that makes them ideal species, because by protecting their entire habitats, they're also going to protect all the other species that are sharing their home with them. So that's kind of where we are at the moment. The next step is to figure out, well, what does it mean if they're ingesting the plastic, and is it okay if they pass it? Well, remember, the plastic also has those toxic substances. So what we're actually really worried about is that they might be ingesting those toxic substances that are getting inside their bodies and causing some problems. So that's kind of the next step of the research, is to figure out what are those biochemical problems that might be occurring to these animals. Sorry, a lot of jumping around. Oh, they don't want me to show this slide. Why? Oh, no.
You can tell us about it if it won't stay.
Yeah.
There you go. It's stuck.
Rivers. Yeah. So what this is a map of the rivers, and where, and the bigger the blue dot, this is from another study, the bigger the blue dot, the larger the amount of plastic waste that enters the water. So in the top left corner is the entire world, and then I've selected out our region. As you can see, a lot of the big blue dots are in our region. So basically what this helps us figure out is how to stop the plastic from getting into the ocean is go to the rivers and try to prevent illegal dumping, clean up the rivers that are the plastic and the other trash that's already there, and stem basically the debris before it even gets into the ocean. So that's kind of a good place to start. And you can help too. You can help at home by quitting some single-use plastics, shopping bags, plastic water bottles, drinking straws, and takeaway containers. So those are your big four that you can cut out straight away. And you can also help out. You can go and clean a beach or a riverbed and get that plastic out of the ocean. You can become a citizen scientist. So you can track the amount of debris that you're collecting, but there's so many other citizen science projects. Maybe manta rays and whale sharks might not be a thing. Maybe you're into sea turtles or something else. There's so many projects you can get involved in and become part of the army of scientists. It's really cool. That's how I got started, to be fair. Make sure you get out and enjoy nature, because you need to love something in order to want to protect it, right? And of course, stay in touch with us, the Marine Megafauna Foundation, for all the other stuff that we might be up to. So in Indonesia, we say terima kasih. That means thank you. And that's thanks to all the volunteers, students, supporters that have come along out in the field and helped me out. This is just a few of their happy faces. And of course, all the other supporters that make the research possible. So yeah, thanks guys. I don't know if I'm run over time, but I think I have some time for questions, right?
Oh, we have tons of time for questions. You did great. So that was fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Elitza. And yeah, we're going to dive in with questions. A few notes before we begin. We've also got 9 groups watching on YouTube. So a few of you have already started typing in questions there. Please do type in questions. I'll pass as many along as I can. But yeah, Elitza, if you want to come out of screen share so we can see you again, that's awesome. Take your time. But we are going to start with Miss Robinson's class. If you guys want to kick us off with a question, go right ahead.
Hand up top. Okay, nice and loud.
So when did you know marine biology was your passion?
What did I know marine biology was my passion?
Yeah.
Wow. You know, it took me a while. It was like I wasn't one of those kids that always grew up and said, I want to study sharks. I was really interested in biology in general. I really wanted to know how things work. So I actually went down the microbiology and the biochemistry route. I wanted to know about bacteria and proteins and DNA. It all sounded very cool. And I did that for a while, but the backbone of my upbringing, there's always been the ocean or the sea. Like my summers were always spent on the Black Sea. I then moved to Canada. I lived in Newfoundland. So it's an island surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. So it was always around me. And one day I decided to have a look in the ocean, put on a mask and went snorkeling, and then decided to take my scuba diving course, and the rest just kind of followed. It was very addictive and it just kind of grabbed me. My mom was like, when are you coming home? And I'm like, I don't know. And in the end, I ended up switching fields completely. So yeah, it just kind of grabbed me.
Outstanding. So thanks for that. I want to note for our classes too, you mentioned scuba diving a couple times. So now everyone can go snorkeling, scuba diving at 10 years old. So every one of the students in all these classes can start going for scuba diving, and you can see things like the manta and the whale sharks. I mean, it's just the most incredible world to experience. So do that. Let's dive in with our second question for Miss Foster's class. You guys have one? Come on up.
How has seeing the effect of microplastics on the ocean and megafauna affected your use on plastic objects?
Well, yeah, you can ask my husband. I'm a little bit crazy about it sometimes. Like, yeah, definitely the top 4 that I mentioned. Very, very careful not to have any of those. It even goes a bit further sometimes when I go to the grocery store these days. I'll end up choosing something when it comes in a glass bottle rather than a plastic bottle, and I just try my hardest because, well, recycling is not really a great option here at the moment, and actually recycling is just it's kind of like a last solution. Reduction is probably where you want to start. So that's where I'm basically trying to do is cut out as much as I can. Obviously, some things we need it for, but as much as I can, I never take away containers, always bring my own. I'm like that weird lady with the glass jars, but it's starting to catch on. I'm not so weird anymore.
It is, and it's fantastic, and it's so easy, certainly in a grocery store, to just come in with your own bag and not get plastic. That's a great place to start, and so good for you. All right, let's do our third question with Miss Haagendoss's class. If you guys want to come up, go for it.
Hi, my name is Elitza, and I want to know, are governments from any countries working on stopping this crisis?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, very good. Actually, right at the moment in New York, well, it's more of a summit on climate change, but it's all quite related. And the United Nations Environmental Program has a big department that focuses a lot on marine debris. In the US, there is the 5 Gyres Institute, which work closely with government. And yeah, lots of countries, including Canada, have banned microbeads from their personal care products. Depending on the province or the state, the ban comes in effect in different times. But yeah, it's starting to happen, and lots of governments are starting to come on board, which is great. Slowly.
Some of the people behind some of those projects have actually been featured in Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants before, so you can check out those hangouts. You also mentioned stopping things at rivers, and I really want to note for classes, but it's just the coolest project. Look up Mr. and Mrs. Trash Wheel. So Baltimore Harbor was the first to do it.
Yeah.
Literally a giant wheel with giant eyes that like gets all the trash out of the river before it gets to the harbor, and it's been a fantastically successful project.
In Baltimore, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Just do look that up, guys. I'll pass that along on Twitter at the end of the hangout too. But for now, let's dive into our fourth question to Miss Pressel's class. Let's see if your mic works. I know you said it wasn't working, so I hope it does. And if not, we'll just take a question online. Let's see if we can hear you guys.
Hear me?
Yes, good.
Are paper straws a good solution instead of plastic straws?
Sorry.
It's are paper straws a good solution instead of plastic straws?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, in many ways they are. In that, paper is a renewable resource, and it decomposes naturally. But a lot of the times just drinking from the glass is good enough.
Yeah, it's interesting. We cover straws a lot in these programs. So plastic's the worst, paper's a little better, metal's best of all because you can reuse it indefinitely and clean it. And then in 99% of cases, you can drink without a straw. But great question, guys. All right, let's go to Mr. Douglas's class. If you guys have one, go for it.
Oh, you see me?
Yep. Sure can.
So, Elitza, Tarima Cassie for that presentation. That's really good. I wanted just to clarify. So, the smallest that of plastic gets broken down in the ocean, it's a nano size, right?
That's right.
So, but that's because of the bacteria. It's as small as it can break it down.
Well, they might even be picoplastics, but we're at our limit of detection.
And what do we know about enzymes probably breaking down plastics?
Yeah, so there was a group in Holland and also in Japan that had come across a bacteria that's able to produce an enzyme that can degrade a certain type of plastic, PET types plastic. So what's in our plastic water bottles. So yeah, that's quite interesting, and it'd be good to hear a bit more about that. So basically one group discovered it and another group was trying to replicate the study, and I forget which one did what, but then they ended up making an even better enzyme that's even more, be able to degrade the plastic even more. It's called PETAs, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. That's a great technical question. Awesome. All right. So our sixth class actually disappeared because they had tech issues, but they're on YouTube. So they shared a question there. So Miss Jassie's group wanted to ask, what strategies have you and your team implemented or that have worked to remove plastic from the ocean, or have you done anything to actually remove plastic from the ocean?
Yeah, so, well, our team works quite hard with just the reduction aspect. So we collaborate with other organizations here locally that go to schools and give like educational sessions to the school kids. So one thing that's quite different here than we have back home is the water that comes from the tap is not drinkable. It's not good enough to drink. You could get sick from it. So in schools, for example, the kids are always given these small little cups with a little plastic lid and a little plastic straw. And we work with this other organization called Bottle for Bottle that basically goes to the schools and encourages them to have a canteen, gives the kids refillable water bottles, and also gives an educational session to try to eliminate the plastic. So we come in and basically talk about marine life and why it's important to get plastic out of the oceans and try to inspire the kids that way. Obviously, anyone that's part of our team is always told like we have to be good role models. And there's other organizations, maybe you've heard of Trash Hero. They have a branch here as well. So they do beach cleanups and we join them as well.
Yeah, excellent. One of the groups I wanted to mention as well. So in Canada, certainly the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup is World Wildlife Fund and Ocean Wise we partner with. So they have like a great data sheet you can use. So it's a citizen science project and cleanups all across Canada.
Awesome.
And you can do it in the States, and so there's a lot of great organizations out there. All right, I want to take some questions from a group on YouTube. So Miss Skinner's class, grade 4s in Austin, Texas, has sent along like a million questions, which is fantastic. So thanks so much, guys. I'm just going to share two quick ones that are excellent. What is the average lifespan of a manta ray or whale shark, and have plastics decreased that in any way? Do we know yet?
Okay, well, both of these questions are, well, we don't fully know the answer to either of them, but we think manta rays live to be about 40 years old and whale sharks over 100. Although we haven't been studying them long enough to truly know. And whether they are decreasing the lifespan, well, this is some of the things that we're worried about. So a lot of these toxic substances that I talk about, they are being able to be passed from mother to offspring. So we worry that they might, in smaller animals where the studies have been done, they, for example, might impact growth rates and development and things like that. So we worry that in future generations that there might be some impacts, but we haven't done those studies yet, so we're not sure. But it's definitely something we fear.
Yeah. And then the second question from the class, and great answer, is illegal dumping the only way that plastic ends up in the ocean? Which I really like as a question.
Well, not necessarily, especially not for microplastics. So if you're using a type of toothpaste or a face wash that has micro scrubbers, any of that, that's already microplastic. When you wash your face, even the finest little mesh, these things can get through, and they're not filtered properly through sewer treatment plants if you happen to have one at the end of your waterway. But a lot of places, they actually don't have any treatments. So in that case, those types of plastics would get into the water. And also you have fibers, which are basically little pieces of your clothing. So if you're wearing some kind of synthetic material, nylon or fleece or whatever, then all this fluff that comes off in your dryer, also when you're washing it, comes off into the washing machine. So that's also a big contribution to the plastics as well.
Excellent. All right, let's dive back through with another round of questions, guys. So we'll start with Ms. Robinson's class. If you guys have a second one, come on up.
Sorry.
Besides recycling, what is another way we could help?
Besides recycling, what's another way you can help?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, you could start at reducing. So choosing not to have the single-use plastic items in your life, but you can also go a little bit beyond that and choose items that are not even packaged in plastic if you can. When it comes to like grocery items, for sure you can do that, and even some personal care products and things. You can get bamboo toothbrushes now, which are pretty cool. I've been using one for about 1.5 years, and I've been really happy with my bamboo toothbrushes, because yeah, we replace our toothbrush every 3 to 6 months or whatever. So that's another plastic item that you can not have. Also bamboo ear cleaners and things like that. And of course you can go and do beach cleans and river cleanups, so prevent any plastic from getting into the sea and help get it out as well. So those are some ways.
Outstanding. And you stole the question I always was going to ask at the end of the hangout, so that's perfect. We've already covered it. All right, Miss Foster's class, if you guys have a second question, come on up.
How much microplastics do you think it takes to hurt an animal, and how do you test to get your results?
Ooh,
Well, that's a very tough question, and it probably depends on the animal. For example, in sea turtles, very small amounts of plastic have been shown to actually be quite harmful to sea turtles and cause perforation, so basically damage to their digestive tracts, which eventually lead, unfortunately, to death of the animals. For manta rays and whale sharks, we're not quite sure yet. There was one report of a whale shark that appeared to have a calcified straw, so a straw that had hardened, or potentially it could have been a pen casing that had perforated the inside of the stomach of the animal, and this whale shark was found washed up on the beach. And when they did the autopsy of the whale shark, that was the only kind of thing that they found that they thought might be the cause of death. But yeah, so we're really starting to learn more and more about that. For whales, for example, there's been lately some really just striking reports on how many kilograms of plastic bags can be found inside the stomach of a whale, or yeah. So it doesn't have to be much, but in some cases an animal can handle quite a lot until it succumbs.
Yeah. I'm really glad we got that question too, because it's really, I think it's nice to share with classes how much science is always in development. Like, we are still learning so much about this as an issue, and there's people doing this all over the world. So it's nice to, I mean, it's a terrible story, but it's nice to track how much that science has developed and to see what we can do to stop it. So
such a fast-growing field.
Yeah. All right, a quick question from online from Ms. Deer, which is, how far below the surface do the animals feed, and how far did you drag the nets to actually pick up microplastic?
Okay. Well, so those studies are currently ongoing as well. From biochemical studies, we know that manta rays and whale sharks likely also feed in deep water. But where we're sampling is near the surface, because quite a lot of the plastic that we, well, the most that we know about plastic is about surface plastic, because that's where it's most easily sampled. And quite a lot of plastic is buoyant in seawater, meaning it would float near the top. But eventually, as plastic spends time in the environment, little microorganisms and algae start to grow on it, and it becomes fouled, and then it gets heavier and starts to sink toward the sediment. So lots of new studies are starting to look at sediment and things like that. But for our purposes, we've only been looking at just near the surface. So our net is rigged up to sample the first 0.5 meter of the water column, which represents where we see manta rays and whale sharks feeding when they're feeding near the surface.
Excellent. All right, let's dive into our final 4 questions. So Ms. Haagen-Doss's class, if you guys want to come back up, go for it.
How long has this plastic affected these animals?
Well, the first studies on plastic were sometime in the 70s. That's when we first started finding out about microplastics, at least. So I guess ever since plastic was in the ocean, when it was first invented, just after World War I, or was it World War II? Sorry, history is terrible. But I guess for at least 60 years or more, potentially, but getting worse and worse as plastic production ramps up more and more in the past 20 years or so.
Yeah, the 50s we've had highlighted in some of our sessions before, some of the heyday of plastic starting out in a big way. But now it's at the point where it's like a garbage truck a minute gets dumped into the ocean is the equivalent, which is astonishing. So literally since the advent of plastics, which again take thousands of years to break down in some cases, this has been an issue. So great question, guys. All right, let's go to Miss Pressel's class.
So does the political and the economic effects have a factor on whether or not we can clean up the oceans faster, or does that slow down the process?
Of course, like, so that's the thing about looking into the plastic problem. It's such a multifaceted problem. So you've got the chemicals, the science part, the animals, the ecology, but then you have the human factor and the political factor and the political will and the social structures. And it's, yeah, of course, we need political will, and we also need companies and organizations to also get on board with changing the way that products are made, because ultimately we will do better if things are easier for us.
Excellent, and I'm glad that got brought up. All right, with our final two, one of them's from Miss Jassie's class on YouTube again, and she just wanted to ask, you've already mentioned a few, are there other biodegradable items that we can use that would easily dissolve and wouldn't hurt marine life?
Well, there's so much interesting stuff coming out now. There's cassava bags, so made out of these like tubers, kind of like sweet potatoes, that would degrade in a not so long time. Yeah, I've even seen like, so here in Indonesia, it's really popular to have like ramen noodles. So, you know, if you open up a pack of ramen, first of all, it's packaged already in plastic, but inside they have like the little flavor packages and stuff. So I've seen some seaweed packaging prototypes that you can just drop the whole seasoning package right into your soup, and then that would take care of those plastics. So there's lots of stuff on the horizon, but it just needs to come up to scale. So I'm really excited for more people jumping on board and demanding alternatives.
Yeah, one of the companies that we have showcased before, which is really neat, there's a company in the States that creates packaging like the styrofoam packaging out of fungi. They literally like grow what looks like styrofoam out of fungi, and it's fantastic in case you're hacking a big box or something. So again, a lot of innovative ideas down the pipeline, and it's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, I've seen it for like reusable plates and stuff as well.
Yeah, so a lot of, again, it's fantastic time. All right, and one last question we'll take from Mr. Douglas's class. If you guys want to come on up, go for it. End us off.
Yeah, it's 12 for me.
Hi, what options are there for someone going into a field of conservation?
Awesome question.
Could you tell me that?
Yeah, so what options are out there for someone going into the field of conservation? Like what jobs are out there? How do you get involved? What's going on?
Oh, well, well, there's always the academic route. So if you'd like to, you know, be a teacher, you can, you know, go to graduate school and then, you know, hope to go into become a professor or not. But a lot of us like to be out in the field and like to spend time where our passions are. So yeah, working for a non-governmental organization, working for the government, even kind of doing your own what is it called, like when you're like a
Freelance?
Yeah, like a freelance, but a consultant. Yeah, so you can consult for other companies. Sorry, I'm just like but yeah, so there's different job options, but you definitely don't get into conservation or even science because you want to make a lot of money. It's not what it's about. You are there for the passion, and you're there because you want to do something for, you know, for somebody else. I have to be honest with the kids, I think.
Yeah, no, and it's fantastic. And I love those options. It's actually because of ecosystems changing all around the world, this is probably the best time to be in conservation biology. It's a difficult time because there are a lot of species being lost, but in terms of consulting for governments, in terms of NGOs popping up, there are more opportunities than ever for people to follow their passions and end up in amazing places like remote islands in Indonesia, studying some of the most incredible creatures in the world and how they're being affected by our impact. So with that, thank you so much for joining us today, Elitza. Before we go, I'm going to pass along a lot of resources and places that people can follow up with you when we're done through email. But is there any last message you want to share with classes of what they can do, or anything you want them to take away from this presentation?
Yeah. Well, I hope you guys all had a good summer. I hope you all like got in the ocean or a lake or, you know, in a bog or climbed a mountain or something like that. And, you know, keep doing that. Please keep enjoying nature and follow your passions. You will find something that you love and it'll just grab you one day. And then you'll know that this is what you want to do. And yeah.
Outstanding. Thank you so much for joining us. What we do at the end of every hangout, Elitza, so I'm going to demute every class's microphone. So every class, if you guys could join me, so Miss Pressel, Miss Haagendoss, Miss Foster, Miss Robinson, everyone is demuted. If you guys could join me in saying a huge thank you to Elitza for joining us today, go right ahead. Awesome. And thank you guys for being our guinea pig classes as we switch over to Zoom in our first Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants session of the year. Thank you so much, Elitza. It was a spectacular start, and we look forward to many more conservation-based hangouts, many more marine plastics. You are marvelous. Thank you so much.
Good luck.
All right. Have a nice day, everyone.